Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 126 of Photo Critiques. And I'm sure everyone's heard that I'm no longer accepting any new images for critique. I will be doing the videos for a while though. I have enough backlog of images to keep me busy through February and through March doing these critiques. So I'm just not taking any new ones in. If you haven't heard why, in the link or in the description of this video there'll be a link, and you could click on that and it will take you to my website where there's a short article I wrote that explains why I'm not doing critiques anymore and what I'm going to be doing instead of the critiques. And I'm real excited about it too. I've been getting a lot of emails of people interested in it, so check it out if you're so inclined. And as I mentioned, this is episode 126, and in this episode I'm pleased to critique the work of Mike Anderson. And Mike sent me in some nice shots. This first one's a point and shoot camera, I believe, and it's a little noisy because of the point and shoot camera, but I like the processing you did here. It's very nice. I like that you have your dog in the shot too. It offers some scale, gives you some idea and depth of how the scene is laid out. The only thing I could suggest is there's probably some natural leading lines here, footpaths and maybe even vehicle roads or paths through this area. And I'd like to see you try to utilize those as the leading line to the dog, because right now the dog is being partially obscured by this bush here, and he's here. So I think if we had like a diagonal line, like this one looks like it's starting out, but it kind of peters out, goes off this way. But if you had one, if you could position yourself in this area so you could exploit a leading line and have the dog along that leading line somewhere, I think it would be a stronger shot. This is a very nice shot at 1 second, f/9, ISO 1000. You have a nice little starburst effect here. For those of you that haven't seen my previous critiques, I mentioned that if you want to get the starburst effect from the lights, you stop down your aperture, usually between f of 8, f of 13, and you'll get this effect. Even f16, f22 if you wanted to go that low, although I wouldn't recommend going that low. Not only that would it take an incredibly long shutter speed. If you were stopped down that far, you'd get some noise in the picture due to diffraction, and you want to avoid that. So between f8, f13, you get the starburst effect. If you don't want the starburst effect, you just open up f 4.5, something in there, and you would just have a round glow, and that's nice too if that's the look you want. But in this shot here, I like the composition. You did a nice job. This is a nice shot of your dog. I like it. You had some kind of harsh side light, and you controlled it real nicely, and the dog's face is pretty evenly lit. I mean, it's not that bad. And you did a nice job and focused on the dog's eyes very well. Very nice shot. The only slight thing I could say in the future you might want to try is try to have the light behind you so the dog's face is more evenly lit, or even if it's above and behind the dog so it gets some rim lighting of the dog. That's a little harder to expose. You would have to overexpose the shot a little bit so you get the dog's face exposed properly, but it would be a nice rim light around the dog, and that would be a nice effect too. I like what you did here. You were at f of 5.6 with your 300 millimeters on your lens, which did a nice job of blurring out the background. And for those of you that don't know, if you use a smaller aperture like f22, you'd get more of the frame in focus. And that doesn't work typically on a portrait when the subject is outside. You want that subject to jump out of the picture. So you would use more of a wide open aperture. Be real careful of your focus, that you're focusing where you want. In this case, it's on the dog's eyes. And then everything else behind it will really blur out nicely, and it makes the dog jump out of the screen, really separates the dog from the background. So keep that in mind. The other thing that helps that too is you were using a 300 millimeter lens at 300 millimeters. Whenever you use if you were at 55 millimeters, let's say, and got closer to the dog to take the same aspect shot, the background wouldn't have been nearly as blurred. Using a zoom lens actually zooms the blur. You get more blur by using the 300 millimeter lens, so that aided in that effect too, to help blur out the background. This is a real nice shot. I like it. It's kind of a nice study of grays. We have this really, really black area here and this really, really white area here and all these different grays in between. Really nicely done. There's a sensor spot right here, and we really got to be careful of these sensor spots. Not always so noticeable on a computer, but I guarantee if you print this, this spot is going to stare at you like you're a teenager with a zit on your nose, and you don't want that. So do what you got to do to get rid of these sensor spots. Hopefully you could clean your sensor in the future, but in post you could get rid of this in Lightroom. In Photoshop you could just clone it right out. This, I think, was your point and shoot camera again, and in a scene like this we need more of it in focus. It's hard to do selective focus on flowing water like this because the water's flowing, it's going to be blurry anyway. So you need something, an anchor point for the person to look at. So you have flowing water, which is going to be slightly blurry, so you'll need the rocks in tight focus, and it's hard, or if not impossible, to do with a point and shoot camera. So if you ever do a scene like this with your DSLR, use a smaller aperture, f8, f11, something like that, and try to get as much of the scene in focus as possible. Then you could use a really slow shutter speed so the water blurs, and then the in focus parts are your anchor points for the viewer to look at, and they see these perfectly in focus rocks but the blurry water. Perfectly in focus, blurry water, something like that. This is a really nice shot. This is, I like the processing. It is a bit overdone. There's a couple things I want to point out in that when I say overdone, it's in the eye of the beholder, but we have this kind of we have a real slight white glow if you look, and you can see that in the video. There's just a little white line outlining the building. Also, it's got this, wherever the building's real black, this black is bleeding out. And then we have that sensor spot again right here. That's that same one that I saw in the other photo. So we have to clone this sensor spot out. It's hard, especially if you're using a plugin, to get this black and white effect like Nik Silver Effects Pro or something like that. A lot of times when you're done, it has this maddening little kind of blur that comes out. So it's hard to get rid of. You have to just try it different ways and expose it different ways, and hopefully you could get rid of that. I like that you have people in the shot too. It kind of offers some scale. You see these tiny people here and this huge barn. So it's really a nice shot. This is another one. We got the water that's blurry, and then we have the snow and ice, and it's a a nice study. It's hard to do. It's 1/6 of a second, so everything is moving a little bit. So it's hard to get anything that's in perfect focus. And like I said, we don't want the water in perfect focus. We want to show the flow. So use a slow shutter speed, even a slower one, 5 seconds, and really get this flow of this water. But we need something that's really in tight focus as an anchor point, and there really isn't anything in this shot that's in super tight focus. And I think that's mainly because everything's moving a little bit. Even the ice is probably moving a little bit. I think that's it. Yep, that's it for Mike. Thank you very much for sharing your photography with us, Mike. I really did enjoy critiquing it. I like to thank everyone that watches all my videos. I really do appreciate it. If you guys have time, go over to my website, anthonymorganti.com. All kinds of stuff over there on photography. And finally, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my videos on YouTube. My YouTube username is Anthony Morganti. That's it for now. I'll talk to you guys soon.